Hello again, everybody. Thanks for joining me again for another Allan Holdsworth lesson video. Now, I don't know how many people who are watching this on YouTube are part of the Unreal Allan Holdsworth Facebook group, which I primarily post these videos on. I had put up a poll asking what songs people would like to see, and this song actually won, which was kind of a surprise for me. I didn't think a lot of people would be interested in it because no one's really talked about it. And the more I thought about the song, the more I said, hey, this could be really good for a lesson video because there's a lot of really cool little stuff in here that I didn't even think about until I started to formulate the lesson in my head. So I think this lesson will be very informative and maybe you guys will get something cool out of it. There's a good thing and a bad thing about the song. The good thing is that it's physically pretty easy to play in terms of what your left hand is doing. There's not a lot of crazy stretches except for maybe one. But the difficult part is the solo changes are really, really tough. And I'm going to talk about that in a separate section towards the end. And I'm going to do something a little bit different for that. I think it'll be easier. So I don't have a chance of making any more mistakes than I normally do. But also being able to streamline that information so it's much more apparent, you can see what's going on. The other kind of drag about this song is, as far as I know, for all the songs that I had put on that poll, this is the only song that actually has something special to do with the tuning. This song actually uses a roll-in pickup because the guitar is tuned in standard, but the top four strings, the D, G, B, and E string, are actually tuned a fifth up. And the other ones aren't. So it's not going to sound the same without that, but I also decided it might be nice if I show you how to play the song maybe a different way so you don't have to use the harmonizer. Well, I'll talk about that more later. And I'll try not to make this video as long as my other ones. I kind of get carried away and I do these lessons sort of off the cuff, so I lose track of time. But as long as you guys don't mind, I don't mind, but I figure the lessons are shorter and more compact. You'll be able to stay with it longer and learn more. Anyway, this is the 16 Men of Tain. So as I just said, this song has really three main sections, an A, a B, and a C section, and then the solo part. So I think the easiest way of going about this would be showing you the different sections individually, then go through how they repeat in the song and how they differ, because each time that there's a repeat, there's some sort of variation to it somewhere, whether it's a couple of chords being added or a slight modulation. So I'll talk about that now. So when I'm talking about these chords, I'm going to be talking about how I'm actually playing them, not exactly how they sound, only because I don't want to confuse myself and make things even harder, because remember, you've got the top four strings being also played a fifth higher. Now they're not just being played a fifth higher, but it's mixed in with the original pitch of the string. So we have G, and then G and D together. So that's what's happening on the top four. The two sounds are being mixed. So the A section is really simple because it's really just a first inversion major chord. That's all it is. It's really a C major chord in first inversion, how I think about it. But remember, because you're playing that, you're also adding in, you're playing a G and a C, you're also playing those notes a fifth higher. So sonically, you're adding in a D and a G on top of it. And so it's more like it almost has like a C major 9 sound in first inversion. And then you move that chord a whole step down to B flat. That happens 3 times. Also, this song is very quick. It's sort of like... And the way that the song goes with its time signature is this first part is sort of in 3/4. And then after this, Allan thinks of counting up to 12, or really 3 measures of 4/4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And that's going to actually help out for the solo section when I discuss it. So it's this C major to B flat major 3 times. And then it goes up a whole step to D. Now also when this section comes back through other parts of the song, there's also a lot of open variation playing. It's not just always those strict chords. once again, it's jazz. You have the ability to improvise and create and expand upon what's already there. But this is really the core harmony of what Allan is playing. So then after that will come the B section, which is actually, all these chords are relatively simple, and I'm going to be naming them how they actually look, what your left hand is playing. So the first chord is a regular G minor 7, or sort of like a B flat major triad with a G in the bass. And remember, this B flat major triad is also being played a fifth higher, which is an F major. And as you see on the bottom here, I'm going to write what those chords sound like together, so if you were to play it with a keyboard player, or if you want to try to voice it a different way, you can, but that's what the overall harmony is going to be. The chord name that I'm giving it is sort of what your left hand is going to be doing. So this is like an F major and a B flat major over a G in the bass. Then it goes to this chord, what I would consider a F sharp major 6/9 chord, or it's an E flat sus4 with a F sharp in the bass. And remember that E flat sus4 also has a B flat sus4 on top of it. Oops. So, and this whole section only has 3 different chords. Minor 7, the 6/9, then the minor 7 again, and E flat minor 7, then C sharp 6/9, to D sharp 6/9, to B minor 7. It's the only chord that's a little different here. You can think of this as a B flat add 9 chord with the 9 in the bass, or you can think of it as a C9 sus4 chord. Once again, it's a B flat with an F major triad on top of it, and then you also have a C in the bass. So all those notes are happening together, and then it goes back to a minor 7 chord, D minor 7. So this is what that whole section sounds like. To the A section. Happens the same exact way, 3 times from C to B flat, and then the last time C to D. Now comes what I consider the C section. This part of the song, Allan actually turns the harmonizer off, so I could just flick that off here, and now we're in regular standard tuning. Once again, you can think of this whole part as slash chords or different ways, so I'll go through that now. The first chord is an A major 7, A major, with a major 7 or the major 7 as the lowest voice. Once again, you can think of it as like a third inversion major 7 chord, or A major with a G sharp in the bass. This part is almost 100% diatonic to A major, but there's a little switch in there. So A major 7, B minor 7, and third inversion. C sharp minor 7, back to A major 7. This is where it changes. Instead of you would expect a E major 7, it's an E minor 7 to D major 7. That repeats similarly again. But now instead of going up to E minor 7, you're playing an F major 7 to this chord. So it's sort of like a C major with an F in the bass. So 2 ways you can think of that is a C major with an add 11 in the bass, or you can think of it as an F major 7 but sus2. F major 7 sus2. Allan uses this chord quite frequently, especially later in his career. Then you play that whole A major section, but you start on G, G major 7, A minor 7, B minor 7, D minor 7, but now instead of playing a C major 7, you're actually playing an E minor 7 chord here, more of a more traditional way, like the open A minor 7 chord, but you're playing it up here. Then for this part of the song, you're using the same 3 same 3 voiced chords. Once again, you can think about them in a couple of different ways. You can think of it as a C sus2 chord with the 6 on top. So C 6 sus2, D 6 sus2, B flat 6 sus2. Such a handful, a mouthful really. Or you can think of this as a minor 11 voicing with the root on the top. As you know, as I said in plenty of videos, the way that Allan thinks of these chords is not particularly as the voicing itself, but what scale it belongs to. So you can rearrange the notes in any particular way that you want to. Why not put the root as the highest voice instead of the lowest? And that freedom is really great and liberating in a way. Sometimes it makes naming these chords pretty tough, as you can see. For me, it makes more sense to call it a minor 11 only because it's a simpler name to say. So A minor 11, B minor 11, G minor 11, and then the hardest chord of the song. This happens twice. You have a C sharp major triad, and you're adding in the sharp 11 on top here. Allan likes to use all of his fingers for this chord, which I find really difficult to do, believe it or not. I find it easier just to bar with my third finger. So this is what that whole section sounds like, the whole C section. Then puts the harmonizer back on and then starts. This is where the bass solo happens. So those are the three main sections. If you got those three main sections down, the rest of the song is really easy because it's just slight variations of those parts and some added, a couple of chords being added. So I'll go through how all the parts repeat in this next section. So hopefully now that you know all these sections, I'll be able to sort of just run right through them and just talk about how they come back and how they're a little bit different. So after where I just left off is where the bass solo happens. So it repeats the same exact way with the harmonizer back on. And then goes to the B section again. Now with this B section during the bass solo, sometimes Allan will actually take the harmonizer off. I think I've seen a couple of videos where the harmonizer's off. Also, he'll just not play the highest note. He'll just play the bottom three notes of that chord. So. Back again. Alright, then it goes back to the C section. Now, at the C section here, that's where the bass solo stops. And it's identical to the previous C section except two chords are added at the end. So it's the same. Also when Allan plays this, he actually uses his pinky to bar, which for me is a little awkward, but if you could do it, you're a better guitar player than I am. So it repeats the same way. But now you're adding, during that whole part, you have a C sharp major with a G on top, that sharp 11. Then Allan uses that as a pedal point. You see him do this stuff a lot. You see him, he does this in Home, where he'll actually, he'll take the top note as a pedal point and he'll sort of move some major triads around. Let's see, something like that's from Home, where he does that. There's another song that House of Mirrors, where he goes. Once again, he's moving a triad up in whole steps while he's pinning one single voice on the top. So here would be the 7th, the sharp 5 or the 6th, and then the sharp 11. He does that quite a few times. So here, it sort of happens the same way. He's playing the C sharp major, and he's playing the G on the top, so that would be your sharp 11. Then he plays an A major with the G, which is a dominant 7, and then he plays a B major with the flat 13 and the flat 6 on the top here for G. So pretty much that's what you're hearing, but that top voice is also. Then the solo starts, and that'll be a whole different section. Then once it gets out of that solo, it goes back to the B section with the harmonizer. Exactly the same. this point, this is where the drum solo happens. So on the album, as I said, this song is kind of is pretty fast. This whole part repeats 8 whole times, but live, since there's a drum solo, it's as long as you want it to be until you feel like, or at least the drummer feels like he's done enough and signals to the rest of the band, alright, it's time to move on. But it's all over that A section. Then on the record, Allan actually plays a high B here, and then an A. Which, remember, that's also harmonized a 5th up, so you've got a B and an F sharp, and a and an E here. Now what happens is it plays the B section again, but now, once again, that tricky Allan transposes that whole part, or most of that whole section, down a whole step. So now instead of starting on G, it's now on F. So it's an F minor 7, and the same rule applies with you still have a flat major triad here that's also being played a 5th up. So you have an A flat major triad and a E flat major triad being played on top of it, and you'll see here the actual name of those chords that's really being played, or the slash chords. F minor 7, E 6/9, C sharp minor 7, B minor 7, B 6/9, C sharp 6/9, open A minor 7, and now here's where it changes. Instead of playing it the same kind of way, now instead of C, he's playing it up to D. So now you have a D 9/4, and then an E minor 7. So just those last 2 chords are actually played, I think, 2 whole steps higher than what they would have been had the entire thing been transposed down a whole step. So that's that tricky Allan. And then back to same thing again. Then comes the final section of the song. So it goes to the C section again. Once again, that harmonizer gets turned off, and it starts out the same way with A major 7. I'll play through it until it changes. Now instead of playing an F major 7 sus2, it's actually an E flat major sus2. So it sounds like this. And now instead of playing it on G, it's now transposed up a half step to A flat major 7, B flat minor 7, C minor 7, A flat major 7, E flat minor 7, F minor 7. It's all exact. It's the same part that it was before, but now it's transposed down a half step. Well, up a half step from what it normally would have been. And then you have the minor 11 chords: B flat minor 11, C minor 11, A flat minor 11, to now a D major with the add sharp 11. That same little part here, B flat dominant 7 to C major with an added flat 13. Everything's still the same, it's just modulated up a half step. And then finally, the end of the song, it's a B sus2 chord to a C sharp sus2 chord, and then he'll turn the harmonizer on and just add like a little shimmery kind of thing there. So that's the entire song. As you can see, physically, it's very physically easy to play with your left hand, but the actual chords themselves are going to be a little weird. Later in the video, I will show you exactly, in my opinion, probably the best way in order to play it without using the harmonizer. And even if you use a harmonizer that harmonized the A string, you're only adding the 5th to that chord, and most of the time that note is in the chord somewhere. So you could probably get away with just having a harmonizer on all 6 strings and getting away with it, instead of just getting a special roll-in pickup and harmonizing the top 4 strings. Alright, so that's the actual meat of the song, and then I'm going to talk about the solo, and I'm going to do something a little bit different here, so hopefully I don't get flagged from YouTube or whoever owns the rights to the music, so you'll see. Alright, now it's time to talk about the solo, and this solo is really challenging, in my opinion. I watched a video of Alex Sill ripping through this and just doing a tremendous job, and I give him all the credit in the world because this chart isn't easy. It's actually kind of brilliant in a way because it's actually got a lot of little like patterns and stuff in there that might not be obvious once you look at it, but once you hopefully I'll be able to show you all these little patterns that are in there. And I basically would like to say that this is sort of like Allan's version of the Coltrane changes. If you're not familiar with the Coltrane changes are, it was done by obviously John Coltrane, where in like a song like Giant Steps, the whole gimmick of that song is it's 3 keys that are a major third apart, and in Giant Steps it's actually kind of the keys are not related. They don't really follow a specific sort of pattern, but it's 3 different keys that are all a major third apart. And I think this is sort of Allan's take on it, just trying to take that idea and expanding on it. So the chords underneath this are actually pretty simple, but trying to talk about every chord in the solo is going to be tough. So I thought it'd be easier to just talk about Allan's chart and try to show you where all the chords are that he's playing underneath it, and you'll see why. So luckily, because Allan was able to upload this, we actually have his not his handwritten chart, but the chart that he created that he released to everybody, and this is what it looks like. So yeah, it looks actually pretty complicated, especially if you don't know what his symbols mean. And I did a whole video about what those symbols mean. And if you want to check that out, I suggest you do. But for this particular song, it's actually pretty easy. You only have 2 symbols to really worry about. And you can see there's the X, and then an X with the circle around it. And if you don't know what that means, X means Dorian, or the 2nd degree of your scale. So for example, if you're playing in C major, starting on D, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D would be D Dorian. So Allan, instead of writing Dorian, thinks of that with an X. So that's D Dorian. So when you see an X, that means Dorian. And if you want to relate it to what key you're in, you just go down a whole step, and that's the actual major key that you're in. The X with the circle around it means I'm playing Dorian with the major 7, and a lot of you jazz heads would already know that Dorian with the major 7 is melodic minor. So the 2 scales are really, it just goes between Dorian and then it goes between melodic minor. And you can see that the first chord is A flat Dorian, then it goes to A melodic minor. I think of that as a cell, because it goes back and forth between those two scales. So over the A flat Dorian part, the chord underneath it is actually B, or actually C sharp with a B in the bass, which kind of has a Lydian sound. I like to think of this chord visually, because a lot of times I think of things visually, not always by how they sound. I know that's not really great, but it makes my life easier. I like to think of this as a 3rd inversion dominant chord, just like we did here. But if you take that G and you put it in the bass, it's the same chord. But now because G sounds more like the root, then you have more of a major 7 sharp 11, or just a sharp 11 sound. And if you look, that would actually be A flat Dorian belongs to F sharp major. And 1, 2, 3, 4, the 4th mode is B. So playing A flat Dorian, or how Allan thinks about over this chord, really gives it a Lydian sound. Then over A melodic minor, Allan's playing this. It's a major 7. It's a major 7 sharp 5. I think of it as a C major 7 sharp 5, or you can think of it as a E major with the C in the bass. Also part of that same chord. If you took the chord that we just did before, you would have this. That kind of idea. And I wonder if that was the genesis of this solo part, Allan taking that idea and sort of running with it. So the chords for the solo section, just for those first 2 chords, so over A flat Dorian, C sharp major with the B in the bass, and then over A melodic minor, it's C major 7 sharp 5, or a E major with a C in the bass. Those chords follow each one of those. So anytime you see a Dorian chord, it's that one. When you see a melodic minor chord, it's going to be the major 7 sharp 5. So as you can see, since there's so many chords, I'm actually just going to play through the song and show you how this chart is actually being read. So so you can see underneath that A flat X, there's a 2 underneath it. That 2 has to do with how long you improvise that part for, 2 measures. Because this song is so fast. 1, 2, 3, 4, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then on and on. Underneath the A melodic minor part, you see a C with that little squiggle, or someone said I think it's like a lowercase gamma, I think. That's also one of Allan's sort of custom scales. Well, not really a custom scale. It's a C major with an added flat 6. And that's sort of an alternate. So instead of over this chord, instead of playing A melodic minor, you can play a C major with an added flat 6, and then added flat 6 is G sharp, which is the sharp 5 here. So it's just another way of interpreting that chord. So now that we have just that cell, those 2 chords, what's really interesting about this is that now it moves up a 4th. So once from there, I'm just going to use my little cheat sheet here. So after that, it's going to go to C sharp, Dorian, and then D melodic minor, which is a 4th up. Then it goes another 4th up to F sharp Dorian, and then G melodic minor. Then after that, if you look at each one of those lines, they're a major 3rd apart, just like the Coltrane changes. So the first line starts on A flat, the second line starts on C, and then the third line starts on E. So I think his idea of the Coltrane changes is sort of like starting on A flat and then doing those 2 chords, that 2 chord cell, transposing up a 4th, and then another 4th, and then now starting on C, and then doing the same thing, and then then transposing up a 4th, then transposing up a 4th, and then that bottom line is the same thing, a major 3rd apart, and then transposing up a 4th, and then a 4th again. But then you'll see on those little stops there's the F with the X and the A with the X, and what does that mean? Well, that's actually where Allan sort of takes 2 lines and then stops underneath that one. So he'll play the first 2 lines and then D melodic minor for 16 measures, and keeps on going. So what I'm going to do now is, with just that information, I'm going to play the entire solo with Allan's chart on top of it. So as you listen to the solo, I'm going to circle what he's playing at that moment, and then also the chord underneath it. And also, instead of writing A flat X, I'll actually write A flat Dorian with the chord underneath it. And you can sort of hear what's going on in there. What I said before, it's actually really pretty smart. And it's like you took a really complex thing, you took a simple concept, and then you just made it a little bit more complicated and a little bit more complicated. So I would imagine to memorize this, he might be thinking of A flat C and E, and then just thinking of that 2 chord cell, moving up a 4th, moving it up a 4th. Then that 2 chord cell starting on C, moving it up a 4th. So now I'll play through the solo. I'm not actually going to play it, I don't know the solo at all, but I'll play the actual audio from the solo and show you how Allan's reading the chart. And I hope you enjoy it and learn something. right? I don't think there's really any chart that Allan has, at least that I haven't heard or at least figured out yet, that follows the same kind of formula. Really, really smart, and that's what I love about this stuff, is trying to figure this out and realizing all the beauty in these patterns and stuff, and how simple of a concept it is, but just done in a really complicated way. So, as I was saying before, in this section, I'm going to actually show you how to play the A section and the B section without using the harmonizer. So I don't have the harmonizer on. So in the A section, as I said, we have that sort of C major in first inversion, but now we're adding in a D and another G. So I think the best way of doing this is not really playing the C, but to get the effect, really the top note is what your ear is hearing. So I think the top melody notes are really the most important. So you can actually just take the bottom two notes and then the top two notes from the harmony and combine them, and you actually have this sort of minor 7 sort of chord. You don't have a fifth in there. And I think this is pretty close enough. Obviously within reason. Now the next part is going to be much more challenging. So for that first chord, the G minor 7, we're adding in obviously we have a B flat there, but then we also have a F major on top as well. So how do we put all those notes together? Well, if you combine them all together, it's an 11th chord really, because we have a G minor 7, and then we have a B flat with a fifth above it, so we're adding in a 9 and an 11. And in this case, it actually would be the same chord as that chord in Things You See with the G. Obviously, that's a lot of work to try to put together. So I think the easiest way of getting the same sort of sound out of this is really just playing it as a minor 9 chord. Now you can try to play it over here, but it's going to be a little bit more tricky. I actually try to figure out a way of doing it, and I think it's a little too hard over there. So what you can do is you can play this minor 9 voicing, and then the next chord, when you combine all the notes, it's kind of like a major 13 actually. So you can actually play that chord like this. But I find this actual physical voicing very tricky to come from here. I can't quite grab it the same way. So what you can do is you can kind of just add in the major third here, and then just play regular F sharp major 13. So G minor 9 to F sharp minor 13. Once again, these chords don't sound exactly the same because we're omitting some of the notes that would make it impossible to play, and some duplicate notes, but at least it gives you the gist of it if you don't want to play with the harmonizer. And as you saw before, there's only really 3 different chords in here, 3 voicings. So those are just the 2 right there. Whoops. Then E flat minor 9. C sharp major 13, D sharp major 13, B minor 9, and then over that sus4, that 9 sus4 chord, you pretty much you can do the same thing. You can add in the 1, the 4, the flat 7, just like from here, but then you can add in the 5, the top note, and then also the F here. You can double it, but at least you can get the same sort of part of the melody. So this is kind of like a 7 sus4, which is another way of playing it. And then, so that whole section kind of sounds like this. This one's hard because this freaking guitar, I don't have much room up here. There you go. And then also you can transpose that down a whole step when it comes back later. I don't even really remember how to play it that well here. Something like that. But at least that gives you an option on how to play it. So that's the whole song. If you can solo over this, you're awesome, because I wouldn't be able to do it without having to look at the chart. So Alex Hill, you're awesome, and also did a phenomenal job where it actually, in my opinion, sounded like Allan, but not as a ripoff of Allan. It's more like as a tribute to Allan. It still sounded like him, but played it in his own way that he thinks Allan would do. I just can't say enough good things about it. It was phenomenal. So anyway, that's the 16-minute Tain, and I hope you enjoy this and learn something and understand the beauty of these patterns and stuff. And so the next song that I'm going to do is the entire song of the On Merry-Go-Round. And actually, it's not going to be too bad, except for that middle section. The other sections are actually pretty sparse, so it's not going to be as bad as I thought. And I'm really excited because I love that that middle section, that whole section. All right, so that's enough for this video. It's probably too long already. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon.